Yo Vishrambat Pratyabodayan Tamadharme Kritamatim Vilokya Pitaram Sutta Marichi Mukya Munayo Vishrambat Pratyabodayan. Everyone can chant, please.
Tam adharme katamatim vilokya pitaram sutta marithi mukhya munayo viswambhat visrambhat pratya pratyabodayam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Tam adharme kritmatiim vilokya pitaram sutaha marichi mukya muneyo vishrambhata pratyabodayan. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Tamadharme Kritamatim Vilokya Pitaram Tutaha Parichi Mukya Munayo Vishrambat Patayo Bodhayam. Hare Krishna.
Anyone else? Okay, word for word translation. Tam, unto him. Adharme, in the matter of immorality. It says immortality there if you look at the word, but that's a misprint. It's actually immorality. And actually in my paperback, my real book, Bhagavatam, it's correctly translated as immorality. So immortality is a little mistake there. Kritamatim, the mind being so given. Vilokya, seeing thus. Pitaram, unto the father. Sutta, sons. Marichi Mukya, headed by Marichi. Munaya, sages. Vishrambat, with due respect. Pratyabodhayan, submitted as follows. Translation. Thus, finding their father so deluded in an act of immorality, the sages headed by Marichi, all sons of Brahma, spoke as follows with great respect. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The sages like Marichi were not in the wrong in submitting their protests against the acts of their great father. They knew very well that even though their father committed a mistake, there must have been some great purpose behind the show. Otherwise, such a great personality could not have committed such a mistake. It might be that Brahma wanted to warn his subordinates about human frailties in their dealings with women. This is always very dangerous for persons who are on the path of self-realization. Therefore, great personalities like Brahma, even when in the wrong, should not be neglected, nor could the great sages headed by Marichi show any disrespect because of his extraordinary behavior. Tamadharme kritamatim vilokya pitaram sutta marichi mukya munayo vishrambat pratyabodayan. Thus, finding their father so deluded in an act of immorality, the sages headed by Marichi, all sons of Brahma, spoke as follows with great respect. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Hare Krishna. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. When I first saw what my verse was going to be for today, at first I was hesitant, uh, thinking, oh, do I really want to talk about this Brahma doing this despicable act? Then I was researching it, and it's so interesting. And there's actually a lot of really uh, great lessons and deep understanding to be had in this. So then, as I started studying and preparing and reading, my enthusiasm for giving class on this verse grew a little bit. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how everyone else's enthusiasm is for this topic. Just before I start, one thing I'll remind, last time I gave class, I discussed this, how Prabhupada was saying that you have to understand uh, how to apply principles and how to apply details, and which are principles, which are details. And a devotee asked, how can we tell? And Prabhupada said, it takes a little intelligence. So it takes a little intelligence to understand this also. Not a lot of intelligence. You don't have to be a super genius, but there's some important practical and philosophical points here that will come out. The first point is that Marici, although actually all the sages, not just Marici, all of the great sages who were the children of Brahma, came forward, and Marici was their spokesman, the spokesperson for that group of sages, to point out to Lord Brahma his fault. And the first point is that Marici and the sages were very much afraid of committing an aparad, of committing an offense. After all, Lord Brahma is Lord Brahma. How great is he? And not only that, he's their father and they're the sons. And he's the source of the universe and the source of all the Vedic knowledge. And so first point is that they were very scared of committing an aparad, of committing an offense. Yet at the same time, they also very clearly knew what their duty was, that some great wrong had been done by Lord Brahma, and it was their duty uh, to speak up, to say something. The very beginning of the purport, first line, the sages like Marici were not wrong, were not in the wrong in submitting their protests against the acts of their great father. So this is the tension there that the Marici and the sages had, that they had to do something, they had to say something to correct this person, even though that person is their superior, yet they were so careful. Therefore, how did they approach? Well, first of all, the first thing is that all the sages approached. Marici was the spokesman, but all the sages approached. So first of all, it was not just one person, uh, you know, making a rant or complaining or saying something, but it was the whole body of these great august sages who were the great sages, the first sages in the universe. So that's the first point. It was not just one person complaining, but it was the authorized body of great brahmanas, great devotees who were speaking up. That means it's not a whimsical complaint. It's not just an independent or whimsical or one person's invention, but it has the weight of all the sages, of the body of august sages behind their complaint. That's the first point. The second point is, how did they approach Lord Brahma? The word used is Vishrambat. This word itself is very interesting and very meaningful. They approached him Vishramba. Vishramba means as a friend. Vishramba also means uh, intimately, intimately or confidentially, actually. Vishramba means confidentially. So they approached him as a friend, as a well-wisher, as a intimate relation or friend, and they approached him confidentially. So what does that mean? Since they approached him as a friend, that means they were not interested in tearing him down, tearing Lord Brahma down, or in making some political purpose, or something, or some vindictive way. But Vishramba friendship means that they were actually doing this for the benefit of Lord Brahma himself. That's what the friendship and the intimacy means. And it's also confidentially. It means they approached him confidentially, not they didn't put it out on the internet, make a Facebook post. Oh, did you see what Lord Brahma did? And share it all over the world on Facebook or whatever. But confidentially, they approached him. You had this mistake, Lord Brahma. This is very improper. You should do something like that, confidentially and friendly, without any ill motivation, without any political or vindictive motives, actually for that person's benefit, to help the person, not to tear them down, and confidentially. Confidentially, because it may not necessarily be everyone's business what happened, and not everyone will understand the context of what happens. And also, if you make something, if you're not confidential, then that'll make it harder for the person to rectify. There's a famous story in ISKCON, although it's many years later, and some of the people involved in it have passed away, but there's a famous incident that there was one devotee, a sannyasi, who fell down in a very bad way. And Prabhupada had made arrangements to meet with this devotee, former sannyasi, and talk to him and try to preach to him and help to him. But another devotee had written letters to many temples saying, oh, this person fell down, this happened, this happened, this happened. And when Prabhupada found that out, he was actually very upset with the devotee. And he said, you have made it impossible for him to return by making a public spectacle of this. So therefore, the confidentiality has to be there. The correction must happen. You can't avoid the correction in the name of not shaming someone, but you have to be Vishrambat. You have to be respectful. You have to be friendly, and you have to be confidential about it. So this is how Marichi and all the sages approached Brahma, because a wrong had been done, and a wrong cannot be neglected. That's the first point, is that the sages were correct in trying to help Lord Brahma in this awful situation. But at the same time, they were still respectful. They were still careful. It's not a license to, just tear someone down to bits and publicly humiliate like that. So the general point is that advising a person, judging a person, even in the right mood, criticizing a person, or even punishing a person, is not categorically excluded in life, in Krishna consciousness, in the Vedic culture. At the same time, a devotee is always so careful when dealing with devotees to avoid aparad, to avoid offending the devotees. Because if you create an offense, what to speak of intentionally, even if you accidentally create an offense, there could be significant negative impact on your devotional service. There's a famous story. This is from Bhakti Ratnakara. I think I've told this story before. That Srila Rupa Goswami, when he was doing his bhajan each day, he would regularly fall into a very deep meditation. And in that meditation, he would actually enter into Krishna's pastimes as a witness and a participant in Krishna's pastimes. Because we know Rupa Goswami has his eternal identity as Rupa Manjari in Krishna's pastimes. So one day in this meditation, he was seeing Krishna's pastimes. And in those pastimes, Radharani was in a little like a nipa hut. In the Philippines, they call nipa hut, like a like a straw hut or a little house, a little place in the garden. And Radharani was in there with all the gopis, and all the gopis were decorating her and dressing her and putting on cosmetics and fixing her hair and putting cosmetics and flower garlands, decorating her so nicely, as beautifully as they could for her upcoming meeting with Krishna. all the gopis knew, but Radharani didn't know that Krishna was outside that little hut. And he was like peering in through a little crack in the hut, uh, watching the gopis decorating Radharani. So all the gopis knew, but Radharani didn't know that Krishna was peeking in. So after they finished decorating Radhika, they held up a mirror for her to see the decoration, and she saw the reflection in the mirror, and then she saw that behind her, she saw Krishna peeking in through the crack in the wall, and she became very embarrassed and very shy. And oh, Krishna's looking, and all of the gopis who were there, who knew Krishna was watching, they all started laughing when Radharani discovered that and became shy. And Rupa Goswami also started laughing. In his meditation, he was there. But unbeknownst to him, just at that time when he started laughing, there was a very old elderly Vaishnava hobbling by. And he was very elderly and he walked with a cane. So he was walking like a limping, like a crooked way with his cane. And as he walked by, Rupa Goswami laughed. And that Vaishnava, that elderly Vaishnava was also himself a great devotee, but he thought, oh, Goswami's laughing at me because I walk in this crooked way. Oh well. And he wasn't hateful, but still he thought, oh, okay, Rupa Goswami's laughing at me. And because of that unintentional, there was no evil intent or no evil action for Rupa Goswami, nor did that Vaishnava take serious offense at it. But because of that, Rupa Goswami's meditation immediately broke. And he tried again and again to meditate and enter into Krishna's pastimes, and he found himself unable to. So he didn't know what to do. So he goes to his elder brother, Sanatan Goswami. Oh, my meditation's broke. I can't enter into Krishna's pastimes. What to do? Because Sanatan Goswami, his elder brother, was almost like his guru. He always took advice and instruction from him. And Sanatan said, the only explanation is that you've offended someone. And I don't know, what did I do? I was just sitting there meditating. How could I have offended anyone? So Sanatan Goswami said, you make a big festival and you invite all the local Vaishnavas to come, and you see the one who does not attend. And that's the person you offended. So he does that, and he sees that elderly Vaishnava didn't attend. So he went to him and he offered obeisances at his feet, and he bowed down at his feet and he was shedding tears. And that elderly Vaishnava was also thinking, oh my God, Rupa Goswami is so advanced, and I took offense. I'm the rascal. So they were offering obeisances to each other and hugging each other and crying. And anyway, it was all resolved like that. But even an accidental or involuntary aparad can have these kind of uh, uh, repercussions. So we have to uh, correct mistakes in ourselves, and if it's our job, our position, or our relationship, in others also, we have to correct mistakes. We have to police Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON movement, because purity is the force, and purity doesn't just drop down out of the sky. We're not a society of all pure devotees. Right at this moment, that means there has to be some policing, some judgment, some care. Prabhupada was always very merciful, but he was also strict. Uh, there was one time very early in 1969 at 26 Second Avenue. There was one devotee, his name is escaping me now, hippie, who became a devotee. And he was found with a joint, a marijuana cigarette in his pocket. And he actually struck another devotee, and Prabhupada said, no, he has to go. He cannot stay. So a devotee has to be intelligent enough, careful enough, and sensitive enough to know how to judge cases like that, how to help the person who has made a mistake, and also how to protect the wider society of devotees. And Krishna is also intelligent enough to understand when a devotee is doing that. That if a devotee is completely sincere and careful, that even if he's so-called finding fault, we hate this term, this act, finding fault, but sometimes you have, if there's a fault, sometimes you have to find it. And if you're careful enough and sincere enough, Krishna will understand that and not hold it against you. Formerly, when I was living in Philadelphia, for example, I was on the child protection team. And part of my duties is that when a person was coming to visit the temple and spend the night, was I had to send them a letter and request their name, address, social security number, and do a background check on them. Because that's the child protection team policy, and that's ISKCON GBC policy to do that for the safety of the institution, to see if someone has a criminal record or some bad background or has committed some other act. So you could say that job of mine was literally, in a sense, fault finding or looking for a fault. But whatever my mentality may have been, that act can be done in a pure way, that I'm simply humbly asking, Prabhu, this is our policy. Please give us this information. It's for the safety of you and for all of ISKCON and all the devotees and the children. So we have to do these things. Not everyone has to do it, but some have to do it. Or currently here in Alachua, I'm working with the ISKCON leadership conduct office, and we have to investigate if a devotee complains that I was mistreated or abused or this or that. We have to look into it. We have to look for the fault. But again, if you're not so careful of aparad and of offending devotees, then that could be a great problem for my spiritual life or for the spiritual life of the person. So we've heard this principle that you don't judge others. And this is important. We don't judge others. We don't know what's in another's heart. We don't, but at the same time, we have to protect devotees and we have to protect Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON, just like being truthful. Being truthful is such an important principle. But as Lord Krishna himself explained to Arjuna, that that also principle of truthfulness has to be understood. And he told the story of the sage who had taken a vow of truthfulness and was meditating in the forest. Maybe I even told this story last time I gave class. I can't remember. And there were some thieves chasing some innocent persons through the forest, and they ran by the Muni. So the thieves said, "Oh, sage, you're always truthful. Where are these people hiding?" So he said, "Oh, I'm so truthful, I have to tell them." So he told them they're hiding there. And the thieves went and killed those people. And the sage was responsible for the sinful reaction. So we're truthful, we don't judge others, but we don't fetishize these things of truthfulness and non-judgmentality to the exclusion of principles of Krishna consciousness and principles of morality. So this is tricky. Again, it takes a little intelligence. As I've said, but again, if one is sincere and if one is very careful and not ill-motivated, it can be done nicely. And in the purport, Prabhupada hints, though, that there's another type of situation, not just judging others, our God brothers or our fellow members of ISKCON, but there are a class of persons that are so big, so powerful, so potent, and also having such a relationship with Krishna that they are not judged in the same way. Prabhupada hints at that in the purport. For example, he says in today's purport, he says, there must have been some great purpose, otherwise such a great personality could not have committed such a mistake. So Lord Brahma is the most intelligent and the source of religious principles. So, and this despicable act, chasing after his daughter for sex, what could possibly be more gross, more disgusting? But because Lord Brahma is Lord Brahma, Prabhupada says there's some purpose, there's some point there. He also says, therefore, great personalities like Brahma, even when in the wrong, should not be neglected. So this is important. This is not talking about mere mortals. This is not talking even about ordinary devotees, but a class of persons who are so potent and so much within Krishna's plan and Krishna's control that we can understand there's another purpose, and they're not judged and they're not punished in the same way as ordinary mortals. Prabhupada discusses several times the principles of anukarana and anusharana. Anukarana means imitating. Anukarana literally means following the activities of a person. And anusharana, sharana means to surrender or to take shelter of someone. So these two things. This is a lecture very early in ISKCON in 1968. That in 1968 means before even initiations had happened. He was preaching to a bunch of hippies, and these hippies were all fond, maybe not every single one, but most of them very fond of smoking pot, of smoking marijuana. But Prabhupada gave this lecture. He said, don't try to imitate Haridas Thakur. His stage was different. We cannot imitate. We can simply follow. Anukarana, anusharana. There are two Sanskrit words. One is imitation, and one is following the footprints. If one tries to follow the footprints of great personalities, that is very nice, but we cannot imitate. Imitation is dangerous. Just like Lord Shiva, he drank an ocean of poison and he kept it on his throat. He did not allow it to go down. So therefore, his name is Nilakanta. His neck became bluish. His neck is blue. But if somebody imitates Lord Shiva and indulges intoxication, ganja, he will go to hell. He is powerful. Somebody says, well, Lord Shiva is smoking, so we can also smoke. No, you cannot imitate. You can simply follow. I'll make a confession. It's always good to expose my foolishness. This was before I became a devotee, but at that time I was reading books by Ram Dass. Some may remember Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, and it's so stupid when I look back on it. But this is I was a teenager and stupid with some spiritual aspirations, but really unintelligent. And he said, oh, if you're going to smoke marijuana, here's a prayer. And he provided a prayer to offer your marijuana to Lord Shiva before you smoked it. And I said, okay. So I used to recite every time before I got intoxicated, I would recite a prayer to Lord Shiva. So this is the foolishness. But Prabhupada says, no. Lord Shiva is so powerful. He's so Vaishnavanam Yatashambhu. He's the greatest Vaishnava and so powerful, a demigod, a controller, the destroyer of the universe, that, okay, he smokes marijuana, although even that, I've never found any Shastric support for the idea of Lord Shiva smoking marijuana, but that's the popular understanding, that Lord Shiva smokes marijuana. And he says, no, you cannot imitate. He's so powerful that he could drink an ocean of poison and not be affected. So you can't imitate that. You can't imitate drinking the ocean of poison, but you want to imitate his smoking. So this is foolishness. And in this talk, Prabhupada is, without mentioning it, he's referencing a very specific part of the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is in the 10th canto, chapter 33, the description of the rasa dance. And after the beautiful, amazing, wonderful description of the rasa dance by Srila Shukadev to Parikshit Maharaj, he asks a question. And of course, the Acharya's commentary described he's actually asking this question but for the benefit of others, not for himself. But he asks this question. He says, this is from 10th canto, chapter 33. He asks this question. O Brahmana, indeed the Lord, the controller of the universe, descended with his Angsa Balaram to establish Dharma and to diminish Adharma. How could he, the enunciator, the institutor, and the protector of the principles of Dharma, embrace the wives of other men? This is the exact opposite. So Parikshit Maharaj is asking this question after the rasa dance, that Krishna, Dharma Samstapanartaya, he has come to establish the principles of Dharma. And what's that verse that Dharma means following the rules of Vishnu? Anyway, the Sanskrit is escaping me now, but it's from the past, I think it's from the pastimes of Yamaraj preaching to the Yamadutas. He said, the actual principles of religion means that which is enunciated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Parikshit is asking, so that everyone can understand, he's the enunciator and protector of Dharma. Why is he doing something adharmic by embracing others' wives? And actually, it's actually kind of funny. Sridhar Swami, in his commentary on this, he says, this is not even a small breaking of dharma. Like he gives the example of someone smoking tobacco. He said that's relatively small breaking principles of dharma, but this is a big breaking of the principles of dharma to be dancing with and embracing other men's wives in the middle of the night. So how is this? And Shukadev Goswami's answer to that is very interesting. This is from text 30 of that chapter. Let's see. Yes, important verse. And this is what Prabhupada was referring to in that 1968 lecture. Dharma vyatikramo drishta. Ishwaranam, that word Ishwaranam is significant. Dharma vyatikramo drishta. Ishwaranam chasahasam. Tejyasam nadoshaya. Vane sarva bujo yata. Sri Shukadev Goswami replied, a violation of dharma by those who are Ishwaras may be a rash act, but no fault attaches to such fiery individuals. Just like fire does not become contaminated even by consuming everything. So he says those who are Ishwaras are not judged and do not receive punishment in the same way as ordinary persons. Because just like Prabhupada said in the purport, he said we can understand that there's some other purpose. Many times with these pastimes, devotees may ask, is this person like Arjuna on the battlefield? Is he actually in Maya, or is this just Krishna's arrangement? And I can't look into anyone's heart, but Prabhupada says there's some purpose behind it. So the purpose is to teach us a lesson about how dangerous lust is, how powerful sexual attraction is, and how careful we have to be of it. So we can understand there's some purpose. And those Ishwaras, they're not held accountable in the same way because Tejiyasam, they're so powerful. They're so powerful, like a powerful fire that will burn to ashes any fuel thrown in it. So it is not the same kind of sinful reaction as others. And who are those Ishwaras? Sridhar Swami also in his commentary says Ishwaras means Lord Brahma, Lord Indra, demigods like Soma, Surya, and powerful sages like Vishwamitra. So these are such powerful persons that they're not held accountable in the same way. And when they commit some fault, Tejyasam na doshaya, although they do doshaya, a fault, it's not doshaya. There's no fault against them for doing it because they're so powerful. Brahma, we know Brahma. This is one instance. There's the 10th canto, Lord Brahma stealing the cat. So here he's committing, I hate to even say it aloud, he's attempting incestuous rape. And then in the Brahma Vimohan Lila, he's doing kidnapping. Or Lord Indra in the Govardhan Lila, he's attempting mass murder. So these are terrible crimes, but we can understand that because of who these persons are, it doesn't mean we reject these persons in the same way as if an ordinary person does, because they're Ishwara, or even a great sage like Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra was so powerful that he actually became another Brahma. He said, he was trying to get some person into the heavenly planets, and the demigods were not letting him. So he said, oh, you're not letting this person under my care enter the heavenly planets? I'll create my own universe, and he'll go to the heavenly planets there. So he was going to be like a Lord Brahma, creating a whole nother universe. So this is how powerful a person like this is, and they're not held accountable in the same way because we can understand there's some particular purpose. Just like the original question is, oh, Krishna's doing adharma. So we can understand there's a particular purpose, and that purpose is to teach us who Krishna is, what the nature of Krishna is, the nature of Krishna's loving relation with his devotees, and how that is different than the lust of this material world. Just like in that same chapter, the very last, oh, actually, we'll get to that eventually. After talking about the Ishwaras, Shukadev Goswami says, Naitat samachare jatu manasapi yanishwara vinashyacharam modyat yatarudrobdijam visham. Someone who is not an Ishwara should never try to do this, even mentally. Otherwise, that person acting out of foolishness would perish. Vinashyati, he will be destroyed. Uh, just like if someone who is not Shiva were to consume the poison produced from the milk person, he or she would die. So this is the example that actually Shukadev Goswami gave. Yataru Jog Dijam Visham, just like Lord Shiva drinking the ocean of poison. So this is what Prabhupada is referring to, that Lord Shiva, he can drink the ocean of poison and not be held accountable and not be poisoned. Lord Brahma can commit these terrible acts. And if you look in the Mahabharata, it'll curl your sika, some of the things that Lord Brahma does. He makes a lot of mistakes, but we can understand he's so intimate with Krishna and part of Krishna's pastimes that he's not accountable in exactly the same way. It's for the purpose of teaching us a lesson. And that's the point at the very end of that chapter, the chapter of the Rasa dance, the very last verse, text 40. Yeah, this is very nice. Vikriritam vraja vadubir idam cha Vishno shradanvito nushinuyad ata varnayedya bhaktim param bhagavati pratilabhyakamam rid rogam ashrapyanoti achirena dira. An intelligent person who has faith and who hears and then describes these loving relationships between the Lord and the young girls of Vrindavan achieves the topmost devotion to the Lord and quickly, without delay, delivers himself from lust, the disease of the heart. So this is the difference when these Ishwaras perform some act, including Krishna and including the demigods, perform some act that may seem despicable, but if you hear about it and appreciate it and understand it, you're actually elevated. A mundane person will say Krishna's dancing with the gopis is lusty, but it's so transcendental that if you hear it and chant it, then lust will actually be removed from your heart. And Lord Brahma is such an intimate servant of the Lord that if you hear about him doing these despicable acts, which he was rightfully challenged for by his sons, the sages, but if you hear about it, you will your sex desires will be controlled, actually, not agitated, as it would by mundane descriptions. So this is one of the points here, that these great, like Lord Brahma, we don't have to reject Lord Brahma and think, oh, how could I be in the Brahma Sampradaya with this terrible person? No, this is all part of Krishna's plan. But ordinary persons, if you're not Ishwara, if you're Anishwara, then you can't take advantage. Just like even in Vedic culture, certain groups are generally not punished. Brahmanas, children, women. Just like one time Prabhupada was giving a lecture and there was a child crying in the class. And one devotee tried to have the child removed, and Prabhupada said, no, let him stay. And he said, children are not to be punished. And he described that. He said, children are not punished, women are not punished, brahmanas are not punished. But then he said, but don't take advantage. So we don't take advantage of that. If a devout person not just a person, a devotee, and not just devotee, even a big devotee, a great devotee, cannot claim immunity in the same way that these Ishwaras can claim immunity. Bhishma and Drona, what amazing, powerful, great people, knowers of Dharma, practices of practitioners of Dharma, and lovers of Krishna, such great devotees. But when Draupadi was insulted in the Asat Sabha, in the evil meeting, and Draupadi was insulted so terribly because they did not speak up, because they did not object. They were held responsible, and therefore the whole Kurukshetra war came because of that. If they had spoken up and stopped it, there would be no need of the Kurukshetra war. Of course, and again, of course, Krishna had his plan, but still the example is there that they were responsible. They were supposed to help. They didn't. Therefore, they were held responsible and they had to die in the Battle of Kurukshetra. And not only die, but sometimes die in very unpleasant and adharmic and ignominious ways. They had to die in the Battle of Kurukshetra. So even great devotees have to be held responsible, even while at the same time respecting them. So that means if a devotee, even a big devotee in ISKCON, does something wrong, there has to be devotees and there has to be a mechanism who can hold that person accountable. Vishrambat, with great respect, with great confidentiality, and with great care for actually helping that person. That has to be there. But the responsibility to correct had to be there. Even Lord Brahma, he's not held responsible in the same way, but for his sin, for his activity of chasing after his daughter in that disgusting way, it's described that he had to give up his body. So what does it mean when someone gives up your body? That means dying, right? You give up your body means you die. But Lord Brahma, because he's Lord Brahma, because he's this big Ishvara, for him giving up his body, because his body is composed entirely. His body is not gross like ours. It's so subtle that he's composed almost entirely of intelligence. So therefore, for him, giving up his body meant giving up this corrupted, awful mentality that led to him committing this terrible act. He gave up his body, which manifested as fog. And so in one sense, he had to die and take rebirth. But for Lord Brahma, because he's Ishvara, it's a little different. Just like that, right, may remind some of us of the pastime of Mahaprabhu and Chota Haridas, because there had been some mistake. Even the mistake was really a misunderstanding. It wasn't even really a mistake. But because of that, it was deemed appropriate by Mahaprabhu that Chota Haridas give up his life. Of course, because he was a great devotee and that was also part of a pastime. It's there to teach us a lesson. And even after Chota Haridas gave up his life, he was able to associate with Mahaprabhu in a Gandharva body, in a subtle body, and sing for him. So, but still, the point is there that there's responsibility for those who are not Ishwaras. There has to be responsibility, there has to be judgment, there has to be proper behavior, and there has to be protection of the innocent devotees if someone is doing something wrong, taking advantage, or harming devotees. Because offending a devotee by criticizing them can be a great aparad, but allowing a devotee to be harmed and not taking action is equally, or perhaps even greater, aparad than that. So again, it takes a little intelligence. The final point I'll bring in, some of you may be thinking in the back of your mind, well, what about Bhagavad Gita? Apichet sudaracharo bhajate mamananyavak sador eva samantavya samyad vyavasaito hisa. And next verse, what's the Kshipram bhavati dharmatma sashvat shantim nagachati. That a devotee, even if a devotee performs the most heinous, terrible, Sudurachar. Achar means behavior. Durachar means bad behavior. Sudurachar means really bad behavior. So Krishna says, Apichet Suduracharo, that even if a devotee performs some terrible activity, as long as he's still firmly situated in Krishna consciousness, then Bhajate Mam and Nanyabhaks, that he's still considered saintly. Sadoreva Samantavya, he's still considered saintly. And Kshipram Bhavati Dharmatma, very quickly he'll return to the stage of righteousness. So how does this factor into it? A devotee can never be, even a devotee does something heinous. Vishrambat, his principle of respect, still has to be there. We don't have in ISKCON lynch mobs or kangaroo courts. But when a devotee does something wrong and some judgment or some decision has to be made, that can be done. Prabhupada says that it's not that this judgment cannot be done, but it has to be done respectfully. It has to be done confidentially. It has to be done for the benefit of the person. And the Ishwaras don't get reactions for their mistakes, but the Anishwaras may get a reaction for their mistakes. Some examples. When Mahaprabhu was touring after taking sannyas, and he had one devotee, Krishnadas, with him as a servant. And that Krishnadas became bewildered and fell down and fell in with a group of gypsies. So this is it's not explicitly described, but we can understand, with our minds that, how he fell down, how he went away from Mahaprabhu and fell in with this group of debauched persons. So Mahaprabhu rescued him from it, but he said, you cannot be my servant anymore. So he was rejected as Mahaprabhu's servant, but he wasn't rejected from the society of devotees, at least not completely rejected. In fact, the devotees in Bengal took this Krishnadas and they said, okay, we'll give you a service. Or maybe they were in Puri. I'm actually not sure where this was. But this Krishnadas went back, and the Society of Devotees, after he had been rejected by Mahaprabhu, said, oh, here's your service. You carry this message and you go to Bengal and you visit Mother Sachi and you inquire for us how Mother Sachi is doing. So in one sense, it was a kind of banishment that, okay, this person fell down. He certainly is not going to go back to being Mahaprabhu's personal servant again. And maybe he wasn't even fit to be around the group of devotees, but they didn't reject him. They gave him a service that, okay, you go away, but you do your service. You continue serving in some capacity. So this was the fate of Krishnadas. Krishnadas didn't say, what? Apichet Sudaracharo, I'm going to go back to serving Mahaprabhu. Oh, I did something wrong. I'm still fixed in Krishna consciousness. I don't get it. Why should I get any consequences? No, there were consequences. But the consequence is never banishing a person from the practice of devotional service. A person should always be given the opportunity to serve in some capacity, even if that serving is just chanting or reading or something. That chance is always there, but their restrictions in society may be there. Another example, famous example, is Jagai and Madhai. Jagai and Madhai were big, big brahmanas at the top of Brahmin society in town. But their activities were so heinous and sinful and violent. And we all know the story of how they attacked Lord Nityananda and were about to be killed. And then by Nityananda's mercy, they were saved and their minds were changed. And they actually gave up their sinful ways and became great devotees. But when that happened, did they say, oh, okay, we're great devotees now. We're going to go back to being the topmost brahmanas of Navadvip? No, what did they do? They took the most humble position. They were cleaning the bathing ghat. Cleaning the bathing ghat actually means suja activity by karma. Although they were great devotees, they took that activity. That means they rejected their In one sense, they rejected their Brahmanhood. They didn't go back and say, oh, we're big Brahmins again. No, we're humble servant, like Sudra cleaning the bathing god, scrubbing the steps where the devotees go down to bathe in Mother Ganges. So consequences may be there, judgment may be there, but it has to be handled very carefully for the sake of the devotee who performs the bad act, and also very strongly for the sake of the devotees who have been hurt or may potentially be hurt by that bad act. And you can't cry api chet sudaracharo in order to avoid the consequences of your actions. You can say api chet sudaracharo, I'm going to continue engaging in devotional service in whatever way I can, but you can't use it to avoid consequences. In fact, a true devotee welcomes those consequences. Tateinu kampam susamikshmano bunjana evat mikritam vipakam. Actually, this is the prayer of Lord Brahma, right? So he knows that the devotee welcomes those consequences. I did something wrong, and Krishna or the society of devotees is giving me a reaction. I accept that. And when you accept that, that's when the chance for actually advancing in devotional service occurs. And if you reject those consequences, then you are shielding yourself from Krishna's mercy and the chance for rectification and the chance for advancement. Tatenu kampam susamikshmanu bunjana evat mikritam vibhakam ridvad vapur bir viridan namaste jivet yo mukti pade sadayabak. That when you accept the consequences of your sinful action, considering that to be the mercy of Krishna and the mercy of the devotees, then mukti pade sadayabak, then liberation, then devotional service will be available to you. But if you reject that, if you say, no, you can't punish me, I'm a big gun, you can't punish me. If you say that, then you're exempting yourself from Krishna's mercy. So anyway, confession, like I said, because I worked with the child protection team and because I'm working with the Leadership Conduct Office, certainly that has colored my point of view in some of this discussion. And, I'm open to that criticism if someone wants to make it. But this example of Lord Brahma is there, that judgment has to be there in some way. And if we're not an Ishwara, if we're not a demigod, or we're not one of the sages born of Lord Brahma, we also may be responsible for consequences due to our bad activities. And a devotee accepts and embraces those consequences and goes on serving Krishna, Rid Vad Vapur Bir, with his heart, with his words, and with his body. He goes on worshiping Krishna. But for the Ishwaras, Lord Brahma, he does this heinous thing. It's to teach us a lesson, and he could still be Lord Brahma or Lord Indra. Lord Indra attempted mass murder. We're running out of time here. I'm sorry I'm going so late. I'll finish up quickly. Lord Indra in the Govardhan pastime attempted mass murder of the Brijabasis. What kind of sin is that? Unimaginable. And in fact, when after the pastime was over, a couple of days after, Lord Krishna thought, actually, this is very interesting. Lord Krishna woke up early in the morning, a couple of days after the Govardhan Leela, and he thought, oh, Indra was sending all this rain and thunderstorms. I hope Govardhan Hill is okay. So very early in the morning, before anyone else had woken up, Lord Krishna stuck out of his house and went to Govardhan Hill to inspect, to see how Govardhan had literally weathered the attack of Indra. And there was another purpose, because he was Vishramba, this confidentiality. He knew that for Indra to surrender because of his ego would have been very difficult. So he thought, let me do it. Let me give him an opportunity in a solitary place so he doesn't have to embarrass himself in front of everyone. So that's when Surabhi and Indra went and offered obeisances to Lord Krishna and offered the beautiful prayers. And one of those prayers is also interesting. Surabhi, Mother Surabhi, prayed to Krishna, Indram nas twabhishekshyamo. Injas means Indra. And twabhishek, we know abhishek means bathing. So, and bathing in this sense means like the coronation ceremony. So Surabhi said, we're going to do an abhishek and crown you, Krishna, as Indra. That means, in one sense, she was kind of rejecting the official Indra, because Indra is the name of a post. Indra's actual name is Purandara. That's his like given name, his Christian name, right? If you want to give Indra a Christian name, it's Purandara, but he's Indra. And Surabhi said, he's not our Indra. Indra's Indram nas twabhishek shimo. I want to crown you as our Indra. And actually, that's what Govinda means. Govinda means Gava Indra, the Indra of the cows and of the land of Raja. So there was sort of an implication in that of Surabhi saying that oh, Indra, he's not Indra. And actually, Indra submitted himself, and he only went back to his post when Krishna specifically told him, yes, you go back to the heavenly planet, you go back now, go back to being Indra. But even in that case, Indra was willing to accept the responsibility. But because he's a Ishvara, it was a special case. So all these cases are there. And again, I'll say for the 10th time, it takes a little intelligence to encourage all devotees, even devotees who make mistakes, even devotees who make heinous mistakes, have to be encouraged and have to be protected, but they also have to be judged. They have to be held responsible. They have to make some rectification for their acts. And especially innocent devotees who have been or may in the future be hurt by devotees doing wrong things, they have to be protected just as much or more than the devotees who do the bad acts. And an intelligent person and a well-managed society will figure out how to do that in a way that everyone can be protected, everyone can be encouraged, and everyone can go on with Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everybody, for your kind attention. I'm sorry I went too long today. If there's any questions or comments, we can discuss now. Yes, Vrindavaneshri, please.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for a really insightful class. I think it's just so relevant, everything you were discussing today. And I guess I have several questions actually, but the one for how do we, if we as a maybe junior devotee overstep or maybe in an attempt to try and rectify a situation with a more senior devotee, if we make a mistake in that situation, even though our intentions are well founded, maybe we don't take the right approach or we overcorrect or it becomes public, or how then what is the repercussions or the correction path forward there?
Yeah, that's a great question and very practical question. If there's a first point, I would say, like I said, as someone working with who has worked with child protection, I might say if there's a case of imminent danger or harm or mistreatment of a devotee imminent, then immediate strong action has to be taken, even if you're a junior, so-called junior devotee, because protecting the devotees has to take precedence over almost anything else. But generally, more generally speaking, if we're a junior devotee, and especially if we're a junior devotee who may not have a close, real personal relationship with the person, as a generalization, it might be better to approach a friend or a peer or a superior of that devotee who might be doing something wrong and have them handle it. Because this print is Vishramba, right? It means respectful, but it also means friendly. So it's often better to either do it through a friend of that person, or again, I'll advocate, because I'm a member, there are certain bodies in ISKCON formed specifically for dealing that, approaching your GBC about it, making a complaint with there's the I work with the Leadership Conduct Office. There's the CPO, the Child Protection Office. There's the name's escaping me now, that Braja Bihari works with, the ISKCON mediation body.
Is come resolve.
Resolve.
ISKCON Resolve, yes, that's it. Thank you very much. So there are official bodies to go through. There's your GBC or senior person, or if you happen to know a senior devotee who is a peer and a friend of the devotee who may be guilty of some transgression, approaching through them uh, might be advisable rather than you doing it yourself. Again, unless there's serious risk of imminent harm to a devotee, then you do whatever you have to do. Is that okay?
No, that makes sense, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Drona Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for this class. I mean, it was really just well designed, and the information you gave, is just really, I think, very helpful, at least from my perspective. I think when you get to we get into this kind of realm of, okay, it's forgiveness, but then also there has to be a form of justice and rectification.
Right.
And I think the most, I guess, undigestible component is when you see individuals who may have committed really kind of heinous crimes. There's not this rectification component to it, but then
And it breaks my heart every day.
yeah, but they're seemingly promoted, or it's kind of swept under the rug, and I think that's what really kind of almost destroys the system, because we want the system to work. We know that we're fallen. We know that we're in here in the material world. We know that people make mistakes. We all love a comeback story, but when we prevent that process from happening by just allowing, you know. I mean, not just within ISKCON, you have the Catholic Church, you have, U.S. politics, you have, I mean, at every level, it's just the cover-ups, and it prevents the natural progression of what you spoke about today from actually happening. I think that's the part that creates overreaction sometime, and it's just undigestible. We just can't take it. Yeah. There was, as I wanted to bring this up, and that I'm just kind of relaying a conversation that I was, I guess, more kind of overheard. It was at Gita Nagari a couple years ago, and two devotees were debating. One devotee said that he believed that every single disciple of Srila Prabhupada was actually a Nityasiddha and came with Srila Prabhupada. In order to start this, the ISKCON movement. And the other devotee had said, well, that obviously can't be, because if you look at the behavior of some of these devotees, they're not that of a Nityasiddha. Now, I guess there's really no way to actually tell one way or another. But one of the arguments that was put forth is that these devotees that had difficulties and troubles, they did so for future generations to learn. Don't do this, don't do that. And they were basically setting the example, similar to, you could say in one way, like Lord Brahma. He's kind of, he fell down to set an example of the behavior not to do. And I hadn't thought of that conversation until today when you when you were speaking, and I just always thought it was an interesting, at least a perspective on fall downs of devotees, where we could look at it and say, that guy was, or that woman, or really kind of went off track. But then there could be another perspective in that maybe they went off track. Maybe it's not for me to judge why it actually happened, but take from the immediate lesson from the situation that I can maybe prevent going astray by learning a lesson from their behavior.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not really contradictory. The idea that every uh, initiated disciple of Prabhupada is a Nityasiddha is, I'll say very frankly, it's preposterous. In the sense that there's zero evidence for it. It's just that person thinks that, but there's no evidence for that. Did Krishna direct for these people to be exposed and become the people who came to help Srila Prabhupada start his movement? Absolutely. That doesn't mean they're Nityasiddhas descended from the spiritual world, and therefore no fault or responsibility can be attached to their heinous activities. That's preposterous. I'm sorry. But on the other hand, those persons who did come in those early days, I didn't come then. I was old enough. I could have been, when I was 14, 15 years old, for example, I lived on Long Island, and I used to go into Manhattan all the time by myself. I could have gone to 26 Second Avenue, but I didn't. So my fault is I didn't do that. And those persons who did it, all glories to them. They deserve so much respect and so much praise and so much appreciation for what they did. But that doesn't make them Nityasiddhas, and it doesn't make them exempt from responsibility. But it also means that, but the other point, the secondary point, that these things are lessons for us, that's absolutely true. Yes, that we can and should and must learn from that, that even the great souls who came and helped Srila Prabhupada uh, had these fall downs or mistakes or heinous activities, and we learn from that. That's certainly a valid point. But just the assumption of them being Nityasiddhas is silly and has no support from anything I've ever seen before. But the rest of it is, yes, that, and respect these people, to meet a person, to be a person who actually took initiation from Srila Prabhupada and took part in those early days, which I was unwilling or unable to do. And others may be unable because of when they were born or whatever, but they had that amazing fortune and they deserve all credit for that. But they're not Ishwaras. They're not Nityasiddhas, they're not Ishwaras. So responsibility has to be there. That's how I would address that. Also, finally, although it's so late, but this is a great story Prabhupada told. He told the story that there was one boy who was raised by his aunt, and his aunt very much spoiled him. He was very spoiled, got what he wanted. When he did something wrong, he was never punished. He never received any consequences. And because of that, he ended up going bad and worse and worse and worse. He became a criminal and a thief, and then he became a murderer. And he was captured by the police, and he was going to be executed for his crimes. And his aunt came to visit him in the jail before he was being executed. Oh, my nephew, oh, I'm so sorry. I love you so much. You're going to be executed. And so the nephew goes, come closer. I have to tell you something. So she comes closer and she says, no, no, come closer, come closer. I want to whisper in your ear. So she puts her ear very close, and that her nephew, the criminal, reached out and bit off her ear. And he spat out the ear and he said, it's your fault because you never corrected me. You never instructed me. You never punished me. I've ended up like this. And of course, the point of this is not to blame upbringing for someone's crimes, but the point is that if there's no punishment, if there's no restriction, if there's no instruction, if there's no consequences, then either on purpose or inadvertently, it's encouraging or allowing bad actions. And then the society as a whole has to deal with that. And just like you said, when the movement, when is Prabhupada's movement does not take seriously restricting or judging people who commit heinous acts, then it creates a loss of faith in devotees. and it actually hurts the spread of Krishna consciousness. So anyway, a lot of stuff here, but always remember, despite everything I've said, you have to respect the devotees and you have to be scared. You have to be terrified at every moment of committing an offense at devotees, even if your job is to find fault, to make judgment, to correct devotees. You still have to be scared of committing an offense. Because if I commit an offense in my attempt to correct someone, that's my fault. Then I'm the operati. So it's intricate. I'll say for the 20th time now, it takes a little intelligence. Anyway, it's late now. Thank you very much, everybody, for your kind attention. I hope everyone in Philly is doing well, and everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Acharya.
Pranam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo.
Krishna Vaishnava